Participant.
Tell everybody what happened to your head.
I had a big hunk of skin cancer removed yesterday.
Ah,
Nothing too exciting, you know. Well, it was really interesting because there are all these people that are around my age group. They're all in there. And they have these Mohs surgery, they do a procedure, and then you just sit there and wait for 2 hours to get results back. I'm close to home, I go home, you know. And then they call you back, and it's just interesting. See, I'm just sitting around the car reading, you know, for 2 hours in between. It's like a factory.
Yeah,
And
that's
there's so many
scary.
coming in and out, and, you know, I'm very fortunate, I got it very good. I actually had another one, I skipped all this stuff because of the pandemic, I had one on my chest that I had removed, probably 6 weeks ago or something. I got caught up from all the pandemic stuff, you know, the only thing I'm missing out on is a colonoscopy, and I'm not in a hurry to get it done.
Here, you want to generate that? So yeah, we have to do the welcome on here. We did it last time. Just whatever. There's nobody here other than us. right?
Yeah, this is it. That's it.
Okay, so we need to double check on the draft framework that Samantha sent out. So I apologize for the confusion on that. Because we were running into potential problems
Oh,
with
yeah.
quorum. And since there are quorum on this committee, then everybody commenting on it becomes kind of a meeting. Although that went to the Lynn went to the to hosted the Conservation Commission roundtable that Jake Gainer does annually, and we asked our Association of Conservation Districts. So she had an answer to that, but she was going to send the RSA. She said that if it's a draft document, you usually okay to comment, but I don't know. That's from her.
We talked about our city attorney, our city attorney. Not this, but that cohort thing. But that was working better. I don't know. I just thought it was a meeting. If it comes to meeting, I think. Or present.
Yeah.
And that's. we do that. Really pass that. I understand a draft document, so you could work on a draft document. in 3 months. Or
I can back out of stuff if necessary.
No, we're still at quorum. And
Okay.
I was at that one too. I'm talking about the things I was trying to interpret what Barbara had said now. I know.
yeah, it'd be nice if we could just at least circulate stuff or have a way of public. Because it seems like you could like have a Google Doc that you make accessible to the public, and everybody can see it. And then, the other alternative that you and I have about is 2 or 3 people. No problem.
Yeah, I mentioned that. to Susan. You thought it was going to be tough. Right, Samantha?
Sorry, I can't hear you guys that well. Is there any way so I could call someone and be on speakerphone? It might be better
Oh, yeah. for sure.
audio.
Why don't I just call you? What's your number?
Okay. 603-828-7643.
You want to stay on here too? Well, we probably should leave it open anyway. And we have the recording, so. We'll do both.
Sorry.
Sorry, you can log off if you want to, but we'll just leave the recording going. In case someone else comes in.
You're going to pick up. Are you okay with that though? I don't mind at all. Yeah.
The number you have entered
Perfect. Excellent.
Okay, I hear ya.
Oh, didn't even ring. All right, great, great. Is
We were
All right,
just,
hopefully that'll be better.
that better? Can you hear us okay?
I think so.
I had to let you know that Lynn just came into the room too, because I think we saw everybody
Okay.
else, but we also have Lynn.
Great.
So, you and I talked about that quorum thing on trying to figure out a way to review documents and stuff like that to kind of keep things going, and maybe having a select group of like 3 people review a document or something and report out. Right? Is that how-
That should be fine. I mean, it's just when you hit quorum. And I can ask if there's a way to do document review, but it seems like if we get it together, then we're creating a quorum. But I'll ask and see if just with the document.
Yeah, because it's not like we come before everyone to accept the edits. It's just,
Yeah, and there is something to a draft document not being subject to the right to know. It's just the way the document is created is by a quorum. That's the concern, I think. How was she saying?
Did you say you could share a draft document, no problem, because of the rule you just mentioned.
Yes, you can
You
share.
could
it.
share a document with draft document with everybody. And then comments need to be like discussed in a public setting.
Oh, so you can mail it out.
You can mail it out. no
Yeah,
problem. And then
yeah,
the
that's
comments
true.
just have to be kind of like reviewed and discussed,
But you
and then
could-
that's part
yeah.
of the public record.
It's really the revision of the document where you're having coordination together. If you're just getting it. That's fine. It's like when we set up the minutes or we send out other things. you know, As long as somebody agrees to apply, then we're fine. It's
Yeah,
just-
but what's our medium? What are we looking to do? We're looking to build a website, right? So why don't we just work on a website and people look at the website and add things and all that kind of stuff? Why are we making long written documents?
I think working on a website is fine too. I mean, if you're- As long as you don't need to have a quorum to do it. it
Right,
should be
so-
fine.
I think we ought to get 3 people or less that are willing to work on this thing. I think it's not 5, other people have done this. We can beg, borrow and steal. I sent out a few websites to take a look at their education programs and say, okay, let's go for this one, find out what we can get from the city. And then there are a lot of people that have those skills to help update it, so I think you need a small working group. I think we tie in the experts we've already identified back in June, the NOFA people. And I got both NOFA from Nikki from NOFA, New Hampshire, their director.
Do you want to wait on that just a few minutes, Ted, just so we can go over that document, the original document first? So
Sure.
just so we have that one off the list as well. Because you're kind of going into who else we're going to include, right? Which is. sort of
Yeah, I
part
just
of
want
the
to get it done. And I think with being overly bureaucratic, I don't think we need to post meetings and all this kind of stuff and take minutes of each one. I think we can do a lot of things. Just like I just went through during the pandemic of creating this website with other groups, including our little group, the one from Dover, and some really high-level groups, Clean Water Action, and the whole thing was overseen by the ICANN School of Medicine. And we just, same thing, we're all over the country. We're looking at the updates. You just update the thing, put little notes in on some of it. The software is readily available. I think we can move this thing along.
Yeah, so originally, with the document that Samantha sent out, draft everybody, I don't know if everybody did have a chance to look at that, and kind of, I had some comments, changes, so I guess we just have to
Okay.
iron that out a little bit, but I thought it was great and really helpful to get us going.
yeah, how do you, I have the document up now in Google Docs, like, I can make changes to it as we're talking here. Is that the best way to do it?
Probably.
And then that becomes a
Okay,
public document sent out as,
Yeah, or not. I mean, we have we can say whatever we want, we're to advertise meeting, so in terms of the forum, no concern there. So any edits that happen here can be a recording, and people can see it.
yeah. So
they
just
just,
Go ahead.
physically see the document.
Well, they can, we can post it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, once I finish that.
Yeah, I mean, it-
Okay.
Yeah, and my,
Well, then
go ahead.
I'm ready, yeah.
Okay. So,
So I wasn't here at the last meeting. Can you just, someone just update me on what this is for? Just how the subcommittee is gonna work, is that the goal? Or,
Yeah, I think, just because we threw out a lot of different ideas and we were trying to synthesize and kind of get kind of a strategy, but make sure everyone's kind of on the same page and then kind of figure out next steps. And I also thought this document might be helpful to hand out when we're trying to recruit people, like Ted was mentioning, to the subcommittee, just to give them a better idea of what we're all about.
great, yeah, that makes sense.
and my comments had to do just a little bit with, sort of the order of things a bit, but, and then a little bit on the background, I think. So Peter, did you look at it too?
I did look at it, yeah.
Because I don't think anybody in this room was, well, maybe Samantha and Jesse were around when we had this kind of from the city council to do this, and Ted's familiar with it too. He's talked about it a lot. I think that's a little bit more the origin of it. So for the background, I had looked at the part, however, if you go down to the 2017. Yep. Samantha?
Sorry, go ahead.
Including eliminating the use of synthetic pesticides and maintaining the property. And others may have comments on that, but additionally, in 2018, the city had grant money to use training. And then it said, however, more support is needed to expand the city's progress in organic land management, including working with commercial property owners. And I kind of was changing that to support that effort. The Portsmouth City Council voted for the Conservation Commission to create related outreach and education materials to Portsmouth residents and businesses. I don't know if that accurately describes it as far as you guys remember. So we were really sort of given instructions to do something along that effort, following up that other effort. And then the other thing I had was under the objective, on top of the objective, I added a goal before the objective, which is sort of a broader, usually broader than the objective, and just to increase organic land care practices among residents and businesses in the city of Portsmouth. And I think I saw other goals, maybe more, ambitious. So when we have organic practices or something like that, but I guess we can talk about that if people want to think about that more. And then my only other comments were a little bit, the education under the actions was just to move some of them around a little bit. Samantha, just to be reflect how you have it in the rest of the document, sort of starting with identifying the organizations or the people first, and then coordinating with the other organizations to help promote second, and then hosting the workshops third, and then
This is my brain just
yeah,
viewing, not in any order.
right,
So yeah, I will reorganize those, take
Okay.
them
and then that's
more timeline,
just kind of on our agenda. I think that's all I have. And then under potential next steps, number 3 under that was coordinate with sustainability committee and city. I just added staff to that, just to city didn't, but if everybody knows city needs city staff, that's
staff. Yep.
I think that's good.
all I had. Others. Chance to-
Barbara, can you send me, not right this second, but the wording? I didn't quite get it all for what you wanted to change in the background and then the goal.
Okay.
But everything else I've done.
My perspective, Sam, is a bigger one. And just a broad perspective, and it's actually what I wanted to tell you about last week, was that rather than calling it organic land care outreach program, we talked about, and some of the things that you talked about, Jess, about tying things into the climate action plan and things of that nature and sustainability. I mean, organic's okay, but I think it's just is and probably better and ties us into the climate action plan a little more if you call it sustainable land care outreach program rather than organic, because it's all tied in. It's going to be all tied into NOFA. And what's NOFA? You know, Northeast Organic Farmers Association. So I'm thinking in terms of marketing being related to the climate action plan. If we use the word sustainable, might be more correct. And I think in terms of long-term thinking, I think organic is beginning to change over to sustainable. So that was the one. And then I think it ties in closer to the climate action plan, you know. But in terms of next steps and outreach and stuff like that, you know, right after we voted at the beginning of June to create a subcommittee, I got going, you know. First thing I did is I checked with both, you know, the experts quickly in this particular field, both north of New Hampshire and north of Connecticut. And Jeremy and Nikki and said, this is what we laid out. And I got Diana Capononi, my colleague on the phone. She has an amazing national connection and network. She's the president of a national organization called Non-Toxic Communities. So we put our heads together with the people from NOFA and the two folks from NOFA, and we spent about 45 minutes on the phone and really got all excited and sort of talking through this kind of, okay, let's get going. You know? So I sent a note the other day to say, oh, hold on, I know, relax, you know, it's going to happen. But they sent back and still expressed their real enthusiasm and interest for working with us. So anyway, in general, we were envisioning a virtual and in-person program that have resources for various stakeholders interested in organic land care in the city. We're envisioning the program would have resources for homeowners who want to landscape organically themselves, homeowners who want to hire an organic land care company, and commercial spaces and clients who may be hiring land care providers or managing land themselves. One of the things we discussed is we need to cultivate more accredited organic land care professionals in New Hampshire. So, and that's where we brought in Norfolk, Connecticut, because they're the ones that handle the accreditation program. So we brought in Jeremy. We talked about it, you know, and we were just thinking through in 45 minutes and said, okay, you know, let's start to get a website together. Let's, you know, what we can do, we can all share that. There's a ton, and if you look at some of these organizations that are all, you know, I work with all of them, and they themselves have fantastic, you know, programs and videos of different aspects of organic land care. I really think it's just borrowing and stealing from the best, and I know we can get permission to use any of these people's stuff, putting it together in a website, figuring out what in-person thing we're going to do. I've already got some potential sponsors. You know, Eldridge Lumber is willing to get sponsored if we do something, and you know, provide their gentleman who's also no credit to help put on the class. You know, I know there's a lot of people we can reach out to bring in some high-level folks to either give us, you know, be there live when we do something in the fall. But overall, our overall intent is to take our time, do it the right way, not rush anything to market, make sure we have a really good program, and then start something maybe in March or maybe sooner, you know, but something in March when people start thinking about it and put on some in-person stuff at the library. I talked to Laura there, handle stuff, special stuff at the library. She said, we'll help you out, you know, no problem. And then do some additional things in the spring. I'd like to tie in the city staff, the two Norfolk accredited staff and the city staff. And I'm sure they're willing to do it, you know. And I've talked to Corin Howell, who comes up the sort of the forestry division, and see if he'll let these guys participate some way. And I'd love to put on a demonstration, you know, of you know, how they make organic tea, you know. It'd be really cool. And I think people would like to do that. So combination of mostly online and then in person, you know. And then the big thing is to promote that putting an organic sign, we can use the NOFA logo or some, something like that, so we have uniformity. We're thinking long-term. We're thinking, okay, the first year, this is, okay, here's Portsmouth. Now, next year, it's Dover. They run the same program, they change the headings, they change it to Dover in that regard. We've already heard from people in Somerswood that are interested in changing some of the practices in Somerswood. So I think we have an opportunity here to come up with a model that others can use, throughout the state and really make something happen. Anyway, that's my take. But I'm ready to go.
No, seriously. No, that'd be cool, because then, yeah, cities that don't have the financial backing, the port and size that Portsmouth has, but then, smaller towns, that'd be nice if they had a website.
And there might be some
work for more people.
money out there too. I talked to Dee Brinker Wood, I don't know if you know about, the Moose Plate grants. And they're different categories, so it's like, how can we squeeze ours into one of the categories? We talked about it. And
Yeah,
You know,
we're
she
also
said-
looking at ideas for the use plate grant too. so
Yeah.
we understand it. Yeah.
I just squeeze it into that
The
category.
red funds are another good way to go, because the cities, if we push back from the city, it's gonna be cost too much, and the council hasn't budgeted for it, so we have to get it into the capital plan, get it into the budget, and it might be easier to get grant funding to do them. Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like what you're talking about
It's big dollars.
costs a lot of money.
No, it's not.
I think it's more getting the support, getting the organization together, running the meetings, getting people there, working with homeowners, the outreach piece. That can be expensive in terms of mailings, but if you do it on a web presence, we do updates in our city newsletter, things like that, you don't necessarily have to have
Yeah,
mailings. And it's possible you could advertise meetings in a utility bill flyer, but that even costs money. Apparently. So, I mean, I think if you keep the cost down, some small grants might help it. Just get the money quicker and support it. But I had a couple comments about the outline or what we're calling it, work plan. The climate action plan, I agree that it's a sustainability objective that we're going after, but I don't necessarily think it fits with the climate action plan as a direct thing that we should push for in the climate action plan. I don't see how organic land care is going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions so much. I mean, I guess it could potentially, but I think it should certainly be, eco-municipality supported activity or part of a sustainability objectives the city has.
Well, what
I
I
guess-
had talked about in that regard was those community-based platforms that we're looking at for homeowners for things to do and trying to incorporate women to, how you should have the law as potentially impacting for that on a greater scale. I appreciate what
Yeah.
you're saying in that it's not directly greenhouse gas related, but I thought maybe there was a time in that way
Like
somehow
if we do a
that could
dashboard, I
be.
see the dashboard piece, but I
Yeah.
still think, we want to try to focus on climate actions and climate solutions in the climate action plan. But the climate action plan is going to be brought to people through the lens of the fact that we're in this power. So it's not going to separate it, and I think that could be, but it could be there's a link on that page to lawn care, but I think in
And
the
my other
climate action plan, I don't think it's necessarily an action that we would push it for there.
Well, and my other thought was that maybe it could somewhere connect into the resilience piece, like when you're talking about, how
Yeah.
do you taking care of trees and all of that kind of thing, like that might be a more appropriate.
Yeah,
Again,
I don't think
you
it's
know, I
so
didn't-
far away. I'm just trying to keep the focus,
Right,
narrowed in on climate action in that plan. That doesn't mean that
well, this
these
is,
aren't good ideas for the city to work on.
this has measurable things that we can look at. All right, so if you want to get a grant, you'll have measurement. The big issue now throughout the country is water. You want to save water. Well, having a green lawn out there is not saving water, and you have data by household. Water is from month to month. So if you can measure how effective your program is, if people start to change practices and follow good practices and things like that. So
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. If you have healthier ecosystems and and that comes when you don't add herbicides and pesticides, then you have better soils that are retaining water, you're not getting erosion stuff, you're, when water gets high, it has a way of absorbing, why the salt marshes are so valuable. So it does actually, it's sort of on a smaller level, it's not gonna, it wouldn't take care of that climate thing, but nothing the US is doing anyway is taking care of it. So it seems as if at least that's something that a homeowner could do. And you could also in that process, and I understand, maybe it's not like the number one, but anyway, if you can get homeowners to less lawn, and take away the square footage of lawn and get them to plantings, that
Yeah,
helps the
so
whole
if there's
thing.
specific
and that's
actions within the
part of
NOFA,
it.
then you could say these
Oh, yeah.
actions. So you have it under sustainability, but you say, in addition, there's some climate benefits with these things, but it's not the goal of the organic lawn care to be climate, a climate solution. It's the goal to be sustainable, right? And then
Right.
climate solutions are one of the benefits of it, for sure. I guess I'm just saying, let's try
So
to keep
it-
the focus on the climate action plan.
Yeah.
To because we don't want to have a billion steps in the climate action plan. We want to try to keep that more focused, and that's all I'm getting at. It's
Right.
more about messaging. It's not that we don't want to do it. It's just that I think using it as a climate action plan thing to spread out might dilute some of the other things we're trying to do with that. So we certainly want to reference it. And it'll fit with the eco-municipality approach with planning activity.
Right, and I think that's how I was thinking of it. It wasn't
Yeah.
gonna necessarily be a major objective of the climate action plan, but in
Right.
there somewhere, it could be
A little part.
or
Yeah,
a,
little-
or an
it could be-
action.
or it could be
or
ongoing
something.
sustainability initiatives in the city. There's this organic land care subcommittee or change it over to sustainable land care.
Yeah.
And, this is a sustainability action that's happening in the city. As part of that, the use of pesticides and herbicides, part of our municipality goals, all that fits in. And then if you have less lawn, you have less watering, you save water, that's a climate action. You can. kind of
Right,
go through
and
it.
that's kind of what I was thinking, is that we just didn't.
Yeah.
That's what-
So I think I would say in terms of the climate action, we can continue that to municipality and sustainability, but then highlight some of the climate benefits
Right.
under that.
Yeah.
So it's not that-
So that would be, the objective here, that last part of the objective is incorporating organic land care strategies into the city's climate action plan. So instead of saying that,
Yeah.
should I say something like, I don't know, and highlighting some of the, like you were saying, highlighting some of the benefits of sustainable land care in the city's climate action
Yeah,
plan?
or highlight it on the city's sustainability efforts. Highlight it as part of the city's effort for sustainability as an municipality.
Yeah.
We
still using municipality.
Yeah.
But they're kind of a passe organization. They don't have an office in us anymore, right?
And we're still using that approach. So it's a sustainability framework that started in Sweden. There's a few communities that have adopted it in the States, and they follow this approach that basically reduces the dependence on fossil fuel, reduces the use of man-made chemicals, reduces the impact of natural systems and treats people. It's the idea of the sort of approach. And then the way that you go about it is through individual decision making, considering those for systems conditions, and then trying to spread that through the community that way. So the idea is to make people think in a more sustainable way, empower people like in the department to be able to think that way instead of just the head of the department saying, we're going to do this.
Mhm.
If you tell everybody this is how we're doing it, then they feel like they can bring their ideas forward instead of, you have to be told it's okay to do it that way. Sort of empowered. And it's a good way to message sustainable practices and climate actions together. So the thought is that that'll reach people in the community. At least from the city standpoint.
Yeah, I thought many people in teams I was working to were going away from eco-municipalities to other sustainable practices because it was saying reduce, not eliminate. In those 4 categories. And they said, should be eliminated. Why are we reducing? So it's a concept from 4 years ago. that it was still using the same language for 40 years, that's all.
Well, we can change that language if you want to eliminate instead of use, but the concept is to, you can't really eliminate, if you're gonna live in the world we live in, so reduce is the only way to get to it. right? That's semantics.
So do we have to change, you have to change, so Samantha got to hit on the objective there and the climate action plan, but there's also something under education of homeowners, provide links on, that's still okay with that.
I would say on the city's website. We don't know if we even know what a CAP dashboard looks like yet, so it might be the CAP dashboard, but I would say just the city's website. It could be the sustainability page, it could be a bunch of places, but
There's a lot of different ways that the website can be handled, Is it okay for me to talk to Helen? Because there's different languages and a lot of the people that we have available to us, they do websites, So anyway, just to find out what's involved, I don't want to tax the city too much if we've got other resources or how he would suggest doing it,
yeah, we need someone who understands that structure.
He's getting some new people too, right?
What's that?
He's getting some new people too, right?
I think so. I think the council approved that. So.
And what do you envision the goal of this website to be? Just informative, or is it interactive, or both, or?
Well, just exactly what I read out, that we want this to be an online program, but also having, face-to-face meetings and things like that.
Right, but when you say online program, like, is that just a website that I can go to and
Yeah.
see the NOFA standards
Yeah.
and ways to do it? Like, it's nothing that I sign up for, I become a part of, I join in some
No.
way. Okay.
No.
So it's just more informative, of here's
Yeah.
what you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a resource.
Yeah. Educational resource.
And this will be like a part of the city website, or is it a link from the city website? And it's actually a standalone website?
I think that's yet to be determined.
Okay.
So, it could be either part of or a link to from parts of it in the city's website, parts of it somewhere else.
Could be a page.
I mean, if the idea is to make it a regional thing, it might be better suited outside of the city's website. If it's just for practice, the city.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right.
That it's part of the city. So.
Maybe it might transition or evolve outside.
Just to briefly go back to the climate action plan, under actions, that I have a whole, like, 3 bullets under climate action plan. So should I get rid of all of that? Or just change that part to, instead of putting in the climate action plan, put it in the website?
I mean, I think if we just substitute the climate action plan for sustainability objectives or sustainability as the thought process. I don't see 3 in the actions, education for homeowners.
No, it's under climate action
So
plan.
under the climate action plan, so what do they do with those bullets? Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I would say it's an objective of the city's sustainability initiatives rather than the cap. Because I think
Okay.
that fits better. I mean, I just can't. Yeah. Take steps in the cap to reduce, ultimately eliminate use of synthetic pesticides, synthetic fertilizers. I mean, I suppose you could argue that creating synthetic pesticide fertilizers impacts the greenhouse gas emissions, but that doesn't mean that some of the organic methods don't do the same thing. So I don't think that's really the specific objective of this group. I just think that's a sustainability, it fits more with sustainability in my mind. And then, so I would say take steps in our sustainability efforts, or continue to take steps, or whatever you want to call it. We already have took these steps, right, to be organic. So this is take steps to reach further into the community with.
The private sector.
And education resources, again, fits on this, the sustainability actions or sustainability page or something like that.
Okay, I can work on that. Got it.
There's also local science with water quality too, right? Is there anything there that we could kind of try to complement or feedback on? Or sustainability
For
for the like.
stormwater?
Yeah.
No, I think that would be great.
stormwater page.
I think the stormwater page would be benefits you can put there or links. Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that is, I guess that's a question. I don't know about that well, but there's still, I mean, there's still potential impacts with organic fertilizers.
Mhm.
So one of the concerns and potential conflict is that we don't allow, we only allow slow release nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers in the buffer. What does NOFA say about buffers?
Well, it's the same thing. Within their standards, we'd be stricter than ours are in terms of what they is the preferred practice. As you know, they're not a legislative body.
Right.
Yeah. They're just a professional organization that provides training. There's about 5,000 members. There's a large, a growing number of those that are, but it's such a, this is maybe the most important aspect of this from my perspective. The taxpayers are getting ripped off all the time. I see it on my own street. I go talk to my neighbor and say, "Oh, do you know what they really put on your lawn?" "Oh, they told me it's organic. It's organic." Yeah, and that turns out it was biosolids. So people are really getting ripped off. So I think we can do a great service to taxpayers by educating them. Here's the questions to ask. We can't. No one's going to sign off and guarantee that, oh, this person's going to do it the right way. That's not going to happen. But we can get them to say I'm accredited, and I promise, and get the taxpayer, the homeowner to say, yeah, again, we put the little signs we follow organic practices and get people talking about it. You do it a couple of times, that really takes off.
I have one, well, I don't know if we can talk about either. So to continue to ask CUP applicants to practice no for land care practices for applicants. There's an issue with how that plays out, and I'll just bring it up here because it's in this program. I think making people or requiring people to agree to it as a requirement of their approval is a little tenuous. I think if we're going to do that on every application, why don't we pass a regulation? And that to me is a cleaner way to do it. It's like to say to someone when they're trying to get a permit, "Oh, you want your permit? Well, as long as you promise that you're going to use stuff," and then they might promise and not even care. So it'd be better if they were educated and understood it and volunteered to do it, because we're not going to be able to check on
I
them.
completely agree with you, and it makes our review as a commission much easier.
Yeah.
Because then it
You don't
comes
have to
through the
keep
plan.
You don't have to bring it up.
We've
all the
already
time.
got it.
Yeah,
Had to bring
it's
it
on the
up.
plan, we see it,
Yeah.
we're done, yeah. So I think that's something that we should take up as an ordinance change rather than requiring it. I think we should recommend it on everybody's application, and then maybe we beef up the outreach instead of just, saying here, the standard, maybe we give them a flyer or something that's easy to digest.
Is there an opportunity to beef up the standards too?
The city standards, yeah. I mean, if we're gonna go in there, and let's decide what we want to change, but if this is one of them, and it seems like people are on board with it, then we just gotta get, the ordinance changed. So I think that would be a better way to go than, making a sort of a negotiation point at a meeting every meeting.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I agree.
So
Well, no,
maybe
I
this
guess.
bullet changes to recommend the city adopt a requirement in the environmental protection standards of the zoning ordinance
Sure.
to require NOFA. And we have to qualify that somehow. I don't know what that is right now. But maybe we don't. Maybe everybody does NOFA, period. And this is only the 100-foot buffer, so it's not throughout the city. That'd be a different place in the city's ordinances.
I don't know.
Zoning ordinance.
Could it be if the water flows into the 100-foot buffer? I mean, there's a lot of.
Yeah, I'm just
right?
saying, we don't see those. There wouldn't be a review point. That
Yeah.
Where they're required. But in this case, if someone's coming in with a wetland conditional use permit application, we might have to remind them. We could say, like we do with the pesticides and herbicides, they might not say anything about it. We have to say, as part of our ordinance, we're required to follow NOFA. And that gets to it. But if we don't see
And
the
then-
application,
Enhanced flyer.
and then have a flyer. Yeah, I think a flyer would be helpful. I mean, the NOFA
Yeah.
standards are long. They probably have flyers.
Oh, they do, they do. They've got things specifically for homeowners and other things. They
Yeah.
really have extensive information, and it's wonderful that they've agreed to like work with us and give us their permission to use their stuff. And same thing with these other groups, look at some of their websites and some of the educational resources they have, and they say, oh, we might want to follow that one too, but the ones that were up there are pretty good.
I wonder if they have anything, I mean, we're gonna actually like pick up this whole idea of like changing ordinances, whether they have any guidance on like what other towns are doing, like, you know, phosphorus Midwest kind of area. I mean, there's towns that have just banned phosphorus completely from city land, all lands. And I actually don't know if that's being done around here. I think nitrogen's a little bit harder to convince everybody to get rid of. But it might be worth just like seeing what other towns are doing. Is there even more ambitious? It's that, I don't know.
It's South Portland or Portland.
Yeah.
Tribe.
Yeah.
They decided not to do it on this, right?
Yeah, well, in Maine, you can ban pesticides in property, all property, private, public, commercial, residential, right? So many more are, but it requires them to create a local ordinance to do it, and that was the big battle. Was the language. So all of a sudden, you had all these industry people, including the pesticide people and everybody else. And they're lobbyists, and you know, it's a
Maybe it's better
great.
to start
Well, that's a
with the
danger.
buffers and
That's a
then-
danger if you go too far. then you
Right,
get
yeah.
to- then you have to
Yeah.
fight
Yeah.
politics.
That was gonna be my question is, could this be a citywide ordinance? But I'm
Well,
guessing
you want to go rule by
it could be in
itself,
time,
But
but
it wouldn't
probably
be,
not.
it just wouldn't be in that.
But this is not what, I mean, you were talking about just the buffers and
Well,
stuff,
just
so,
the-
yeah.
Just a small rule.
What the Conservation
administrative.
Commission works on mostly, but it's conservation lands, it's everything. You could, I just haven't thought about where it would fit as a citywide ordinance. I thought in the environmental protection standards, it would probably only work with wetlands, because that's the applications. of city.
Yeah. Oh, I was just wondering, because the city could, I mean, would it be city council or the zoning board? But, I mean, people higher than we are, in in different
So.
things,
it's
they
this-
could decide to, right?
I don't know.
Obviously, it wouldn't be us,
So
but it was,
the issue there is that it's sort of a planning and the way New Hampshire's rule.
yeah, that's my question.
You can't always just do what you want to do. You have to have enabling legislation. So there is enabling legislation to let communities be more strict with their wetland regulations. And they get their approval through a conditional use permit process because of that. I'd have to figure out whether there's something,
Okay,
we'd have to figure out if
yeah.
there's something that works for NOFA citywide that we can
Right.
implement.
So New
And
Hampshire
then
law
We went ahead
might,
and said the organic, so maybe under that.
Yeah.
But that was for the city government, right? So.
Yeah.
We can
was
tell our
city
city government to
policy.
do anything, it's city policy.
Right.
To
so
tell
you're
the
saying
people
New
of the city.
Hampshire law might keep,
Like
would,
Maine law is
could
home rule, they
prevent
can do what they
Portsmouth
want.
from doing
Yes.
something.
Yes.
So it's a bigger law, okay, that's what, okay,
we can look
that's
at
what I
property
needed to
rights,
know.
We can look into that, there might be something already, if other communities have done it. we can see what's
There-
happening.
Newcastle was futzing around with it for a while. I don't know.
Newcastle was?
Yeah, I don't know what they ended up doing. I think they kind of did it, but there's like no enforcement or anything like that.
Kind lights.
There's PREP, the Piscataqua Region Environmental Planning, and they did an assessment back in 2020 that looked at what the 52 municipalities of the Piscataqua Region watershed have done with their regulatory and non-regulatory approaches, that we could always look and see what everyone else is doing if we want to
What was that again?
see how they
Press.
PREP,
Oh,
the
right.
Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership.
Got it.
I'd be willing to take
And
that on.
there's 20 assessments. I worked on that assessment, the previous one, I guess, before 2020. Now they've done more with it, but it's pretty comprehensive to see what everyone else is doing in terms of their buffers and that sort of thing.
So
Wanna
that,
check
in addition
Yeah,
to the,
sure.
in addition to that piece, it's how do we, what's the hook the city has to get people to know that they have to do it?
Yeah,
you know,
right,
to
right.
advertise it. How do we get it out there?
Well, just this program.
Yeah, this program, right?
I mean, this
And that's-
program, we have to
that's-
figure
right
out how
now-
to advertise
Right
too.
now,
So
that's all we've got. Is there a way,
Right.
but is there a way to compel it in regulations that makes it?
Right.
It's out there.
The MS4 funds, like.
Could be in stormwater, it's a site plan, right? So,
Yeah,
site
a lot of
plan and
prep for that.
subdivision, yeah. because they're not. just gonna
There's, and they're
just- yeah.
supposed to put something on the site. plan.
Unless more, so
Yeah,
there's a lot in there now.
yeah, yeah.
Subdivision regs. A lot.
So I was just gonna say, instead of just changing that to continue to ask or to suggest, we could just say, continue to suggest the CUP applicants and inform or something like that, them, educate
Or
them, and
maybe
then,
request, how about request?
Okay,
Instead of
request.
real strong.
sure, and then,
Yeah.
then another bullet saying, or within that bullet saying, the next step would be to look at that.
Recommendations on the article title.
But that means we can't put it as a stipulation on our CUP.
No,
Is that,
tell me that as an ordinance, right?
Yeah, I mean, it should be an ordinance to do that, but, you know, if the applicant agrees, technically you can. It's just, you know, better,
I mean,
better if we can
but
require.
with restricted no, that's the thing, is like, they probably feel obligated, but they have to say yes, or they're not gonna get the permit.
That's good.
That's the problem.
I think that's the idea.
Okay, I can work up the wording on that, change the wording on that anyway.
The vast majority of these applicants are all well represented by engineers and attorneys. So I don't, we haven't experienced any problems with anybody in that. So
No, I just,
No.
It's 'cause they're
I
not
just
gonna
wonder,
do it.
I just wonder if the attorney is like, oh, no, just say yes.
Just say
Yeah,
yes.
It doesn't matter.
Right, right.
They can't catch us.
They won't, yeah.
But,
Yeah, the
you know, there
invasive-
might be ways to follow up with people, you know, if we're out there and we see someone. You know, enforcement is important and we want to make examples of people, really, it's the only way we can do it. If we see someone out there with a mosquito net, whatever they call those companies, you know,
Oh,
spraying
yeah.
chemicals. If we see them spraying, we could essentially bust them if we had an ordinance. Right now, we could if they agreed to it in their approval, but it's not as prominent. You know.
So we're good with the document, and then we just have to, so I don't know about discussing the timeline goals yet, because we don't know exactly.
I think we just want to get a small working group and get going, you know, and I don't know how much these other people can provide, what they, you know, what's off the shelf or not, but I know that they would know. And
So do more work before we try to figure out when and what can happen.
Yeah, or at least know what we're gonna
Right,
do.
exactly.
Yeah, but originally we wanted our next meeting to have a whole bunch more people, so
Yeah.
are we holding off on that, do we think?
I think it's getting too bureaucratic already. I think we're not getting stuff done. It's already almost August.
So
This
does
is,
that, how
this
does
is
that,
a we just talked about ordinance change. That's like as exciting as it gets.
It's
It's like big progress. I mean, like hosting an event is like small potatoes compared to an ordinance change.
So true.
so how does that answer the question though? Are you saying we don't talk about who else to vote?
Yeah, I think we just get it below 3 people and just call it a working group or something else rather than some formal.
There's too many of us here, is that what you're saying? You're gonna beat us out.
And then report back once a month to the rest of the commission. This is what we got. And then once you start to do a product, make it available to anybody so they can see it and comment on it and all that kind of stuff. That's my
We
thought.
could split
Yeah,
into like some
You can
subgroups
have
here.
as big,
Yeah.
you can have as big a group as you want, if you only have 3 or fewer conservation.
Yeah, we could, I mean, we
So
could.
you could get it, oh, sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
you go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, he's already got his team assigned, so they
Yeah.
can do a bunch of stuff, show it to us, and then we can, and you're doing the
The ordinances. of
the
other towns
ordinances. And so that,
With maybe some
but that would be a separate
help
prong
from you,
anyway.
Sam, if you're up for it.
What were you gonna say?
What am I up for?
Helping me decipher ordinances and the prep assessment
Thank you for volunteering.
and come back.
Yeah,
I can take the lead, but I feel like it sounds like you got some expertise there.
yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, I was just thinking like we might do like some little sub teams here. Like it seems like this
Yeah.
ordinance thing is kind of like very different, I think, actually. than,
Yeah,
Like doing
yeah.
an outreach piece. And
That's
so
a
maybe those
totally
could be subgroups. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely sign up for the ordinance team.
My feeling is, you take the ball and run as far as you want with it. We'll be just running behind. You and Sam will be, no, you guys might
Well,
be,
I think,
but I'll be
I
far
mean,
behind.
I think Ted's got the outreach part. I mean, let
Yeah.
him run with that.
That's, yeah.
Um,
And
get
if,
it, go ahead.
and if Ted needed some of us to help, he could, whatever, pull in whatever he wants, keep it below quorum level or
Or just
whatever.
advertise.
Or just,
It's not
yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but yeah, so sort of as needed or whatever.
It's easy to post a meeting.
Yeah.
You can do that with people, that's great.
Then you get into, summertime and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah. it's
Like I
common.
myself, I'm gonna be away for 4 weeks, I just don't know what for, even starting in August. and just, I won't be in touch. It's a shame to me. I can emails. or anything.
You'll probably be working on this stuff. don't you?
Yeah, so what's your next step in terms of outreach? You have like one little next thing and then
Yeah.
maybe.
I would get Diana Capeloni together, or get people from Norfolk, New Hampshire, from Norfolk, Connecticut, top of those guys, and said we kind of got permission to go forward. I'd call Alan Brady and find out about the website piece, so that you have a vehicle that people can see what you're doing and you're putting things in. And I encourage you to take a look at some of these websites, because
Yeah.
you have people that of various backgrounds and, some scientists, some, regular folks like me that, work on this stuff together. We actually, I'll keep my own horn a little bit, but the Partnership for Healthy Plain Surfers, we originally recruited 2 years ago to be part of a grant for the NIH. No one's ever studied these synthetic fuels in 50 years. So no one's ever hooked up with kids or adults to them and try to measure what these people are these really smart people, So we figure out a way to do that. So they put a grant together as part of it. We didn't get the grant a year ago. So they refiled this year, and they don't tell you till October, but they kind of give you a pre-appraisal in the beginning of June. And it looks like we're going to get a grant. So it looks like we'll be part of this 5-year study. And my job locally will be working with local communities, get people to volunteer, be part of the study. We've got it, overseen by Mount Sinai. So, it's a really fascinating group of people that work. And it's really interesting. But look at some of the stuff they do and some of their websites. It's amazing. And there's all kinds of stuff. Big dollars, steal them.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, is your next step pretty much finding out who will give permission for you to steal from
Well, kind of, and I don't, that would
with
be,
their
I
blessing?
think that'd be more filling in the blanks. I'm really looking to the professionals at NOFA to provide a lot of guidance, and really Diana Capeloni, she's fantastic. She's unbelievable. She's a woman that's been doing this, trying to get pesticides out of our environment since 2013. And she's so knowledgeable. There's all these people from all over the country. She happens to be disabled, so she's at home all the time. And that's her main job. And that's what she does.
So it's probably a bunch of people without a lot of proprietary interest, and they just want the information out. So they
Yeah.
might be very willing to hand over
Oh,
a
yeah.
whole bunch of HTML to get uploaded onto the city website or wherever, whatever. But so, okay.
Well, that could maybe be your first task is just creating that resource page. It could live on the city website somewhere. Just, think it.
Yeah.
So it lives on the city website, or the city website links to it? I still need to clarify
I
that.
don't know if
because-
Yeah, I don't think we know.
We don't know,
Because-
but
I mean,
You could start
there
to
could
mock
be
it
a
up.
Yeah, and there may be barriers of things that you can put on the website, because I know from the state, there's
Yeah.
tremendous barriers. And who does the maintenance of it too?
Right.
You have to go through the city, so that could be a barrier, you may want to change something and add something, and then you've got to go through the state, speaking of the city, that might not be good.
Yeah, but there's an advantage to this, if it's a city initiative or city effort, then there's an advantage. You might have to get council approval or some kind of approval at some point to do it, or make it part of, whatever, part of a formal conservation commission effort, whatever the approach is. But I think Alan and Secor help us understand what could include going to the website, if it's a link to something, or it's a city website.
Yeah, I was gonna say, could it start out with links to these other, because, you know, you can link to anybody. I guess you usually should ask for permission probably, but I don't know if that's still being done. But at least that could give sort of a basic skeleton of it before it. I don't know, does that make sense? Unless you-
Proprietary.
Right. But if you're going to their site, they do keep I mean, they're keeping ownership of it if you're just transferring them over, so. It might be different. Anyway.
And would you do this sort of keeping informed, Ted, with what we had talked about as far as our audiences are the residents?
Yeah.
And the people that do the maintenance or the companies that work for the residents. So we want to set that up and having them be certified or not certified, but listed.
Yeah.
I think, you know, just throwing a whole bunch of information on the website from other organizations is great, but it gets confusing. And if you
Yeah.
don't have sort of a framework of where you're gonna go with it, and
Yeah.
narrow it down, people aren't gonna use it.
Right.
To have that.
Yeah, I was thinking of the web links more for our use, sort of initial, like before it gets, whatever. But yeah, because you need to make something, it needs to be user friendly. If you're just doing a bunch of links, nobody's gonna do it. The public won't. And the commercial end of it, like, not just the. Like,
I'm gonna call Andrew Simone's. Try him to get part of that. He was talking about that, when he was on the commission here. But
mhm.
people like that, that's what I call it, on the planning board. Call them, they interview, or find him doing this thing, and we would talk about it. I don't know, that would be
Yeah.
my thought. You know. Some young buck that really wants to get to know everybody in town. you know.
Mhm.
Do you mean commercially with the landscaper people or?
Oh, I was
commercial
thinking
companies doing
The
it?
companies who hire somebody, so you get both, but I mean, there's a lot of corporate grass around here. I mean, actual grass, so, it'd be nice if, you know, a lot of that got shifted over, because that's probably the bulk of,
Okay, so what's the next step?
We got an ordinance team, and then Sam so far, and.
Yep.
The outreach team, we got Ted. How do you want to?
If anybody wants to join the outreach team, let me know, but I just want to keep it under 3, so we don't have to post and all that stuff, and we can just, but even if I'm not here, you know, you can zoom into anywhere, you know, or if someone else is on vacation, they can zoom into anywhere. You know, like, see.
So, and you're working with all these other people too.
Yes. I would report back, you know, to know what's going on.
With that goal of creating kind of at least a web presence, a resource page online for this effort. Because I think that's like a great first step, right? 'Cause if we're gonna do any kind of an event, we want to be able to point people to like, if you want to learn more, go right here.
Yeah.
There's some more specifics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
So, and I'll participate, I've done websites, so I'd be happy to.
Okay.
participate. One other person at least. Anybody else? And then, that's it so far. We just have those two teams.
That's enough.
that's.
Yeah, so one other like need I could see, and I don't think it's gonna be a huge lift, maybe it already exists, it's just like some sort of a little like page we can give applicants that come before us, you know, that's just like. Some sort of a little resource page we can give to applicants, you know, that's like, here are the absolutes, here are the city requirements, and here's what. You know, Conservation Commission recommends, and we can even just spell it out.
And this is what we're gonna leverage you with. No.
If that's needed. To the NOFA flyer, Lynn, you think? I don't know exactly. I was thinking just like, you know, the buffer rules, like the slow release fertilizer. Yeah. So we could make it, you know, when we bring it up, it's also about like education, just so you know, not everybody knows these rules,
Right.
but we're just gonna take a minute to explain them, and here we have this resource page. Or this, you know, this one page fact sheet or whatever it is.
Yeah, because there's
Here's what
usually,
the city requires.
there's usually one guy in the team that knows it at the meetings, and the other guys are like, are we doing that? You know, and whatever. So this way you could, yeah, just give it to the
Mm-hmm.
elm, I mean, right off the bat, it would be,
Yeah, maybe it could be
so then.
Doug to help that on the same one page. If more than one page, I feel like it's not gonna be looked at.
Right. But there could be a section of like, and we recommend you take it even further. And
Yeah.
kind of spell out those 3 other things that we keep asking applicants to do, so it's,
Yeah.
they're not like surprised by it, it's just like, here it is. This is-
Right.
Here's what to expect. It could be city and state
I think
regulations.
it could be, yeah, you have to make it.
Right,
But
yeah. Wait, what?
Would that be specific?
there's
to
not
the-
anything together yet. They're not put together,
Okay. That's good to know.
I would think, because our
But-
city regulations.
But user friendly.
Yeah.
But Ted said there's flyers already, NOPA has to kind of fit that bill in terms of describing NOPA. So
Mhm.
maybe we include that and we talk about what's here for the city, what we recommend. And what we're looking to follow.
Mhm.
And then at some point, we require it, we say, this is what we require. of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what the benefits are, how it's local practice. Climate, all the good things.
Just keep that on the radar. for now. Start working on it. Okay. I thought it was start reading the regulations for us.
That's how it needs to be.
So timeline, so you're gonna be away for a while, so are you gonna be
I don't
working
know
on
when
this?
I'm gonna go. So I'm planning on being here for the month of August, but it could be moved up. So I'm not in charge.
Okay.
When I'm going, but I'm going.
And so, do you want- go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I put out initial feelers to some of those other groups. Do people want newer volunteers? I mean, I sort of just generally spoke about it, not really knowing what our plan was or what our vision was.
And
but-
whether or not someone here should be attending their meetings now.
No, but initially there had been discussion of this group being broader and not just Conservation Commission members. It sounds like we've kind of shifted that a bit and it's just gonna be smaller little subgroups of this group doing specific tasks. Are people looking? Do you still want me to spread the word further? Do you want to just pause on that and kind of take some steps first and then see
I
what
think
kind of
pause on that
support?
and let's get going first. And let's see what our holes are. That's just my thought. you know.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And keep them though on your radar or maybe
Yeah.
somewhere, because when we start doing things, if you get their buy-in and that brings it onto a whole new audience. So
Like
that
community
would be awesome.
outreach kind of thing, you never know what connections and
Yeah.
feelings they'll have out.
We do have the sustainability on the agenda tomorrow. I don't know if we still want to bring it up.
Well, we could do an update.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, excuse me, I'm gonna excuse myself.
Excited to collaborate a little bit.
So do we want to meet again now as a group? You know, I think just to kind
Sure,
of keep this,
sure.
I think meeting keeps it going.
I think so
Okay.
too.
Sure. Okay.
So another month,
Sounds good to me.
okay, and beautiful.
We just picked the same.
Yeah.
date,
Just keep this going.
Is that our intent?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna excuse myself.
August
Mm.
3rd.
I'm in danger.
Bye, Ted.
I have
August, Sep-
interrupt
September
too.
1st. September 1st, okay, Ted? No, September, August 31st, never mind.
August 31st,
Yeah, that's this,
right
That's-
now.
that's the Wednesday, one, no, yeah,
Okay, Samantha, maybe August 31st?
Maybe, I don't know, yes,
Yeah.
no, we'll see.
All right.
we're just gonna schedule it. And then you won't have a forum, you'll be all set, talk about whatever you want. No, we
What were
can-
you
we
gonna
can
say,
adjust it.
Samantha?
We can adjust.
She's
it.
gotta
Thank you,
go. I
guys.
think she's gotta go.
Okay,
Bye.
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 Thank you so much for your document.
Yeah.
Yeah,
me
thank
too.
you.
It was helpful.
Yeah.
It really did.
I think she's got
Yeah, but I think we should get a tiny bit more momentum, maybe one more meeting just this week. Then we could have a few more people join.
Yeah, and start getting feedback from other people and other ideas, especially once the website gets going. And
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna be a public meeting anyway. and so, Yeah, what's the harm? And we show that like. the-
When we have
patterns of
content to
most
do,
things.
yeah, we need content probably first before, I mean,
Yeah,
unless you know people who are going to supply content, but then we can. Whatever. but, I mean, I could see why until. What were you thinking that might be useful? Other people would be good
Record it.
if there's no content yet. What were you thinking after this?
Get review. Mark just said.
Okay.
No.